I'm an idiot.
Good.
Okay. For the record, we prayed and we got a synopsis already. I just forgot to press start broadcast. So, just so that's on the record. Okay. So the issues were communication, and just management leadership. That's what we decided, right?
Mhm.
Was there anything else anybody wanted to add?
It fell into a culture of complacency.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a huge issue.
I would add that there was kind of, because of that, there was like a lack of responsibility. I think maybe Cameron mentioned that, or someone mentioned that. Just because there was so many different things going on and a lack of communication, no one in the end was ultimately responsible for kind of what was happening.
Right.
Carelessness too. Like I feel like even though they should have felt that even the tiniest risk is a gigantic risk, they didn't. They just dismissed, and they were like, "Oh no, it's fine. It'll be fine. It has been fine every other time."
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Like, along with what Mike was saying too, like it is just complacency. Like, I almost felt like they were just lazy, and like Linda was saying, like this is not the thing to be lazy about or complacent about. It's, you know, people's lives are at stake, as well as who knows, like billions of dollars worth of equipment. I feel like they should have been a lot more careful, and any warning signs at all of malfunction should have been addressed properly.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that I really kind of rubbed me the wrong way, I guess you can say, while I was reading it, was that they brought to his attention that something was wrong, and instead of saying, okay, what do you see that this error is wrong, instead he said, prove to me that it's wrong before I actually go and check it. That's
Oh, I
kind of like
know.
the mentality, like, prove it to me that it's wrong, and then I'll go check it. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the one time where you do not say that. You take things seriously.
Right.
Another thing they did is they timelines and the mission was more important than the safety of the crew.
Right.
Yeah, what was that one lady? Linda Ham, I think. She was more concerned of the schedule and, you know, the agenda or whatever her next mission was supposed to be. She just wanted to get it done.
Well, and I think, personally, I kind of feel like what helped foster all of the issues was, it kind of stemmed back for me to the budget, and just how they said they almost had to kind of justify recently everything that they were doing to the White House and to all the other organizations. And so because of that, you know, they were kind of trying to get things to go off without a hitch and willing to overlook things just so that they could show results and have things happen, so that they could justify the cost or the billions of dollars that they were spending.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of lame that they kind of pushed it forward, even though they knew that there could be an issue, just because they felt like they were falling behind schedule, and they just wanted to keep their quota or their schedule or whatever.
Well, and I think it's funny because, like, well, the issue was, I can't remember, with one of the left points or something is where it always was. And in the case, it said that they kind of finally decided, oh, we're going to try and fix it. And so they sent like 2 or 3 missions, unmanned missions up, trying to figure out and solve the problem. And after 2 or 3 missions, they just decided that they couldn't solve it and that it was fine. So they just left it. You know, and they invested all that into it, trying to solve it, and then in the end, they were just like, oh, it's okay, we'll just leave it, you know.
Yeah.
So it's just funny.
It kind of seemed like there was, like they let protocol take precedence over what what they probably knew they should have done.
What I found interesting about the protocol, there are times when they would skip the protocol out of order, and then when it was important, oh, we have to stick to protocol.
Yeah.
They were on both sides of it.
So, like, conveniently picking when they wanted to follow protocol or disregard it. Okay. Was there anything else with the issues that you guys wanted to point out at all? No. Okay.
My favorite quote of the whole thing is, "We can't do anything about it anyway." Really?
Oh, I know.
Yeah. Was that when they were like having the argument?
Yeah.
Yeah, like there were several emails going around, and someone said, "Oh, even if there was something wrong, we can't do anything about it anyway." So.
Yeah. I also liked at the very end of the text part of the case where it talked about how the guy in charge of NASA or whatever, he still denied that they did something wrong, like with the phone. Like he said, there had to be something else wrong.
Oh yeah.
It was ridiculous.
I know. I almost wanted to see them kind of like squirm a little, but no.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely a lot of things wrong there. But which is the time period between a threat and a major accident or prevented accident in which collective action is possible. And it asks, what was the recovery window in this case?
Hey, can you repeat that question again? I was a little gone.
Sorry, I wasn't facing the microphone. So it's asking about the recovery window, which it says is the time period between a threat and a major accident or a prevented accident in which collective action is possible. And it's asking us, what was the recovery window in this case?
However long they were in space, was it 16 days?
Yeah, because they discovered it after they shortly, when they were watching the videos, and so they had the entire duration that they were up there.
Mm-hmm.
It was like the first day they knew they had a problem.
Yeah.
I think one of the main issues that happened there is that everything became so normal. Like, the debris coming out and all those things coming out for every single mission, and everything was successful. So at some point that just became normal. So when they were up in space, instead of, like worrying about it, everyone's like, oh, it's just fine. We've done it, 100 times already like that, and it's all good. So I think one of the main issues that they had is that normalization of the issues. Because, once a problem, it's a problem when it happens, but it happens 100 times, it's normal, right?
Right.
So that being normal I feel that was their main issue. They allow it to be normal instead of like following protocol like someone said before.
Yeah. One thing also about the recovery window, did anybody else catch how at the end of the case it kind of gave a timeline day by day of what actions were taken and like what happened, and there was like a span of like, it seemed like it was about a week, if I remember right, from when they stopped like trying to figure out solutions and stopped trying to do anything with the foam. And there was like a week between that and when the Columbia came back into the Earth's atmosphere. Did anybody else catch that?
Yeah, I think it was like day 8 or was when like it posted the last like conversation, and then the next one it just said day 16, Columbia burnt up on re-entry.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Yeah.
So there was like more than a week they were just like sitting there, and I guess they kind of came to a conclusion somewhat that there are so many people in the camp that there was nothing wrong, and that if there was something wrong they couldn't do anything about it. But still, it's like if it was me, I mean, and people's lives were at stake and everything, I think I probably would have tried to convince, and if I firmly believe that, I would have tried to convince people otherwise and
Yeah.
tried to take action.
Didn't they also do like I think it was 5 tests to see like whether it was a big damage or something like that, and they, I think, decided with the test that it wasn't, or the test showed that it wasn't of big importance or something like that.
Right. But
the systems that they were using were not even being used properly or correctly, or.
Right. The engineer didn't. He had only done it like twice before.
Yeah.
And then he just ended up doing it or whatever.
Then the other issue is in NASA culture where everyone has a boss, and in order to get to the main person, the person who it's kind of a long chain of command. So one person says like, "Oh, it's normal," and one of the engineers was the one that was complaining that it was totally dangerous to do it, and they still did it. But his voice could not be heard on the people who actually make the decisions. So I think that was part of the issue with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, too much politics involved.
That's right.
Yeah.
The typical point of this whole thing is the fact that they could have taken a picture of the underside of that shuttle and would have told them all the information they needed.
Mm-hmm.
I know. Did anybody
they-
else wonder why they canceled? I mean,
Yeah.
It was
it would have been so easy to continue with the request for the images, and they just canceled them. Like, oh no, we don't need them. Like, really, you don't need them?
what it came down to is that in order for them to take those pictures, they would have to halt all the science experiments, turn the shuttle towards the Earth, and they didn't want to mess with the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it
But
was.
I
So let's
agree.
mess with
I
people's
mean,
lives. People's lives.
Yeah. But I mean, they scheduled it, or it was requested, and it was gonna happen, and then they were just kind of like, oh no, we don't need it. But I mean, there was clear evidence that there was damage done during takeoff. They just didn't know to what extent, and they wouldn't even take pictures to see to what extent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and somewhere it said that even the people that looked at the piece of film that fell, it was the biggest one they had ever seen.
Yeah.
So even that they weren't like, maybe this one could have caused more damage than we've seen in the past. Like nothing made them think that it was a possible risk.
Yeah.
And I expected more from NASA, honestly.
Right.
I was a little shocked going along with like the images and the pictures and stuff. I was a little shocked that they kind of skimped out on the cameras on the ship. You guys remember how they were saying like they stopped like updating them or maintaining them or
Oh
whatever,
yeah.
like really old lenses, and they didn't get good views of everything. So I was pretty surprised by that. Usually, my perception of NASA beforehand was everything was probably top of the line and worked great, but yeah, I was surprised by that.
Right, that no detail was overlooked, basically. That was my impression.
Yeah.
I think one of the issues was the budget cuts. So all these projects were costing them like so many million of dollars, and then they got budget cuts. And it feels to me that instead of still keeping up with all those materials and with all that, they were just focused more on like, oh, we gotta meet deadlines and the schedule and whatever, that they forgot or they stopped putting money into the security, just like those cameras and everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So one of the things that the case talks about is how they downplayed ambiguous threats to the Columbia and to NASA. And one of the questions that the agenda is asking here is, what is human cognitive bias, and how does it apply in this case?
Oh, human cognitive bias? Well, I don't know, but I just saw in economics that cognitive bias is when you only pay attention to the information that agrees with your perception, basically, and ignore everything that doesn't agree with what you already believe.
Yeah, so I think this is going along with what you said, Linda. They try to look at the information they wanted to look. Like, oh, is it alright if it's launched like this? And I was like, yeah, it's fine. It happened before, but there's issues, but they only see oh yeah, it's fine. It happened before. And
Right.
there's issues. It's just for them it's not existent. There were more biases towards the schedule and trying to show off that the Columbia was doing so great that they forgot the small details about, the safety and all those things.
Interestingly enough, they also forgot about the previous disasters that had happened with like Apollo and the Challenger, but convenience, I guess.
Yeah. So this says that Human cognitive bias is systematic errors in judgment. So
Oh, okay.
I think we pretty much covered that. Let's see, we've kind of covered a lot of these things in the agenda, so I'm skipping down a little bit. So it's asking, what is shared cognitive framing? Has anybody even heard of that before?
I've heard of framing, but I don't know if it's the same as in economics.
Yeah. It's okay, we can skip that one. I don't know what it means either.
Okay.
So, when did the problems with the Columbia begin?
Since the beginning.
Yeah, since they accepted the challenges from, what was that organization, the DoD or something like that?
I think
Like during, what?
the first launch, they start losing some of the squares that protect the spacecraft from the heat, and that's when it was like, okay, well, it was they replaced, I think 300 of those and pieces of the foam, and that's when they start saying, okay, this is, you know, an avoidable cost of evolution. We'll just have to replace them as we lose them. And that's when they start kind of saying, oh, it's okay.
But I think it started even way before that. Like when they were building the entire thing, when they were trying to meet the demands of that organization or whatever, they had so many challenges, and it was so difficult for them to meet all of those demands. And then on top of that, they didn't test the shuttle the way they normally do with an unmanned flight. They just tested it on the ground and with computers or whatever, and they were like, oh, it's fine. So I think everything from the beginning, from, you know, doing something that they didn't really have experience doing, and then not even going the extra mile to test it before they put men in there.
Yeah, I agree. I almost kind of think it was like a fly-by-night, because they were getting pressured so much by all these organizations, and you know, about the budget, and so they were kind of just like, oh, well, we'll make a space shuttle that can go up a bunch of times, and we can send it up 50 times a year, you know, and it'll make a bunch of trips, and so it'll be economically friendly because it won't be that expensive. So then they felt rushed to, you know, kind of meet all the promises that they had made, and I think that they maybe cut corners in development.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like a lot of the issues that they had actually started like way before the Columbia was even there, with just the general culture at NASA. It talked about similar issues or issues that the Columbia had, and how they became, I think they call them acceptable risks. And like we talked about before, there was just like an air of negligence, or what's the word? Not caring, I guess. Carelessness. That I feel like that kind of developed in their culture long before the Columbia.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I agree with that.
Yeah,
I work
somewhere.
I work for a nonprofit organization, and what happens in a nonprofit organization is the bureaucracy just keeps growing and growing, and the worker gets smaller and smaller. So more management, less engineers kind of a thing. And I think after Apollo 13, the government came in and they set up that safety, whatever thing they set up, for what might they follow. I think their bureaucracy problem started around there.
Yeah.
Bigger.
That's exactly what I was going to say, is just somewhere after Apollo 13, because, I mean, they got it right with Apollo 13 and the Tiger team or whatever, you know. They were able to go and they put their heads together and figured things out, and they brought them back even after, you know, something had happened, and you know, they worked through it. But then, like Mike was saying, from that point on, things just kind of started changing in the hopes that something like that would be prevented from ever happening again. But I think they ended up causing the exact same thing that they wanted to prevent.
Agreed.
Or maybe they saw how much it cost them time-wise and money-wise with Apollo 13, and they were like, well, if we did something, it's going to put us back quite a bit.
So why did the debris strikes become an acceptable risk, do you guys think? We've kind of been talking about this, but somebody could verbalize that, I guess.
I'd say overall or ultimately laziness. I think that they saw so many times that nothing happened. There were no tragedies that were pinpointed back to the foams, although maybe it could have had something to do with the accidents in Apollo and the Challenger as well. But they just since most of them made it back successfully, they were just like, nah, it's not even worth looking into it, even though it is a problem because it shouldn't be falling. And they were just like, no.
I agree with that. The normalization of the issue is just, it became easier to say, oh, it's all right, we'll replace it when they come back, rather than to spend the money and the time to actually fix the issue. Because I assume if they were gonna, to say something like, okay, we're gonna stop the shuttle a couple months so we can figure out a way to send it without this issue to happening. They didn't want that to happen. They just wanted to keep doing it, and just to not do that, they just kept going like that, which at the end ended up in being a disaster.
I think it's the same thing as stealing a candy bar. You steal a candy bar, you know it's wrong, there's something wrong, you do it, you keep doing it till you get caught. And then when you get caught, also it's bad again. It's kind of the same thing. So it was a big deal at the beginning. They looked into it, nothing happened until something happened.
It's kind of like a little kid's mentality.
Yeah, but they should have learned something from the previous disasters. I mean, you would think that because these things have happened before, they have a history of these things happening before, they would have tried to be proactive about it, but no.
Well, where did the not listening to the engineers come in? Because that's what happened with the O-rings, the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up.
Treading on nasty water here, and they still went with it.
Yeah. So, we've kind of talked about a lot of different issues with this case, but what do you guys feel is the root of the situation with the Columbia mission?
Politics.
Go in.
Protocols. They, at first they had all these protocols. Okay, if this happens, this is what we do. And, they stopped following those things, those basic rules that they have, and that's what leads them into ignoring more and more things.
Yeah.
It's the bureaucracy trying to cover your own tail.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel like it was more of a. Yeah, I feel like it was more of we don't want to get in trouble by having this delayed or by going over budget or all these different things that they didn't actually listen to any actual concerns that came up. They just said, well, this needs to happen and I don't want to get in trouble for it, so we're going to go ahead and just move forward with it kind of thing.
Yeah. I wonder, don't they get in trouble for losing people? I mean, when something like that happens,
I guess so.
Doesn't the government do something like, hey, hold that, or I don't know, something?
I don't know. I guess they just had a bunch of companies or a bunch of different departments to blame it on.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't think any one person held the responsibility, and that's kind of where the problem lies, is that no one had the responsibility to make that call, so everyone just kind of kept pushing it aside, pushing it to someone else. And
there's lack of accountability. That's another problem.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's those two things. It's bureaucracy and lack of accountability, and I feel like they kind of go hand in hand. So how would you guys characterize the culture of NASA? And it's asking for both strengths and weaknesses. So if anybody can have any strengths to offer them, then remember to give those too.
The space shuttle's pretty impressive.
Hmm.
Pull that off is a strength. There's so many different aspects and parts and things that have to come together. I mean, that's an impressive thing.
They were very ambitious too. They were very innovative. They looked, you know, I mean, of course, space exploration, but they looked very, very forward to the future. You know, when the Columbia was being built, that was way back, you know, in the day. So they were already thinking about several trips and doing, you know, commercial trips and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So they were ambitious and innovative.
Another thing that's probably good from NASA, they are a very structured organization. I mean, everyone has to go through their proper channels, which it's good. It probably saves time and effort for a lot of people, but it's also its downfall where, you know, have to go through those channels take time. Because in an organization, usually you don't go directly to the CEO. You know, you have your boss first, and they have to go through other things. But usually, there's more ways to be heard than just, you know, have to go through all the hoops to talk to someone who makes decisions.
Right.
Unless there's a problem they're trying to blame on somebody. And then no one accepts it.
Yeah. All right, so we've kind of talked a little bit about the accountability issues, how nobody really took full responsibility and accountability of what happened. But who would you guys say were played like the major roles and were the major contributors to the failure of the Columbia mission?
I mean, I'd say management was the biggest part of it.
Any specific people you guys remember from the case?
I don't know if it was a specific person. I mean, the whole, I can't remember if it was at the MIT or the MMT, the board that was supposed to be in charge of it. I think, because I know it was Rocha, I guess.
Rocha?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Rocha. He kind of like was trying to get everyone to see how serious it was, but it kind of seemed like even his supervisors, when they took it to the board, they would just downplay it and just be like, oh, you know, this is kind of the results we found, you know, not a huge deal, we've dealt with this before type thing, where he was always kind of the one that was like, no, this is a big deal, but just his superiors and everyone else that kind of was in the position to actually do something didn't just really get it done.
Agreed.
Also, the people that said we can't do anything about it anyway.
Yeah. The main person that I thought of that kind of epitomized the negative culture and attitude coming from NASA was the one that Rocha was had the argument with in the hallway, where at the end he was like, well, if it is an issue, there's nothing we can do about it anyway, so just drop it. And I thought that like
Yeah.
put the negative situation in a nutshell right there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just crappy attitude. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's an issue. Do you have a solution? Like, no. Well, then, you know, stop complaining about it.
Yeah. And there were solutions. They just didn't want to think of any.
I don't think they wanted to put the time or the money into any of those solutions.
Yeah.
Because usually
I think I was right.
things like that, it's not like, you know, like, oh yeah, we're gonna spend $100 on research. You know, sometimes several $1 million in just research to, you know, find an answer, and, you know, maybe a couple of years in time worth of time. So they just didn't want to put the time or the money into the research to fix the problems.
Yeah. What I was thinking is, how would those people feel if it was them up in the spaceship, or like their loved ones or family members, like how would they be acting if
Oh,
the tables were turned,
good
Right.
question.
Yeah, they probably take more consideration to every little detail and everything like that. Because they'd be like, this is my life on the line. But
Yeah. If I was a family member of one of the people that died in the spaceship and I read this case, I would be pretty darn upset.
I actually went to YouTube and looked up some videos because my lifelong dream has been to be an astronaut myself, so I was very into this. So I actually went to YouTube and there were some I saw things I wish I hadn't, and heard things I wish I hadn't. Like the family members were just, you could see the rage in their faces. It was incredible.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Which, I mean, you would have thought that people would have paid more attention. I mean, we're talking about human lives and, like someone said, like, billions of dollars worth of equipment and things, and being so careless about it, it's just stupid.
I wonder if the shuttle, what's it called, space shuttle program was paused, or if the next mission actually went after the incident. I almost hope it didn't, just to
I think there was a little pause, if I remember
some
right.
delay. Okay.
So this is asking about group dynamics, and it's asking what the concept of team design is.
Of what?
Team design.
I'm not sure I understand.
Me either. I was just throwing it out there. We can skip.
I guess if we need to throw something out, team design would be like everyone working together for the same goal and purpose rather than individual people or individual entities working on individual parts. They're all saying, okay, this goes here. Why is this important for this? How does this correlate with the other group members that I'm working with? Things like that. I think that would probably maybe be team design or what he's looking for in that question. And that obviously wasn't the case. That went down, but I think that's what definitely needed to happen.
Yeah. This is saying that it's 5 conditions that, when present, increase the probability of team effectiveness. And it's A, clear boundaries, B, compelling direction, C, structure, D, system that supports the team in completing their work. So yeah, as you were saying, those things were definitely not were not present. Clear boundaries, that was not present. I felt like it was very jumbled whose responsibilities were what. And that kind of goes along with compelling direction. There was no compelling direction to the decisions and actions that were made and taken. There was no structure. And there was no system that supported the team in completing their work. There was no motivation for them other than trying to save the spaceship and the people's lives. But they didn't really. There was nothing really pushing them other than that to find a solution.
Yeah.
Pretty evident now.
Also, on the no boundaries, I think that there wasn't no boundaries because, you say something like, okay, if we lose this many tiles or we lose this many foam, we'll stop. We'll research what can we do better. And there was no boundary of such. That, like, everything could have happened and they would still go in the same way instead of stopping and changing and researching or developing a new way to do it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It asks, what is the concept of psychological safety?
Well, it hasn't happened to me yet, so I'm probably okay.
Yeah, it says
Yeah, I would go with that.
team climate and designs team behavior and performance. A concept of risk-taking, culture, and team unity.
Well, it's easy to risk when you're not the one at risk.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
definitely. Um, so I guess we can probably wrap it up here. Sorry again that it took me a while to get everything figured out. Kind of had to shorten it a little bit, but
It's fine.
does anybody have any last comments about this case, or any last things they wanted to share about what they learned from it?
I probably don't want to be an astronaut.
Yeah, my eyes were definitely opened. But
Yeah, they should privatize that.
Oh, they should. They totally should. Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe one day it will be privatized and people will be going to space.
Actually, now that you mention it, I think. Oh, where is it? My brother told me of something that I think is kind of along those lines. I think it's
Hey,
a type
there
of
is.
NASA that is now private, and I think it just started, and I don't remember where it is.
I was researching. I was just looking up NASA, and it was talking about their future goals of going to Mars, and how they want to send someone there and bring them back. And there is a private company. It's called Mars One. And they're the ones that want to colonize Mars because they say that the technology needed to send someone to live on Mars is a lot less than what's needed to send someone and then bring them back from Mars. So
Oh my.
they say we already kind of have the technology now. To do it, we just need to figure out how to get it all there. So there's a private business called Mars One that has
Wow.
received a lot of funding there, trying to get it done.
Crazy.
That's cool. Do you know where it's located?
I don't. I know they have a website. You can just go to Mars One. That's what I was looking at.
I know that they've been doing a lot of recruiting too. Like supposedly they sent out some kind of like video submission thing that a whole bunch of people who wanted to go to live at Mars, like it was a one-way trip, and like people would like volunteer to go there, and they'd send in video submissions saying why they should be a good candidate and stuff.
Actually, isn't that
I've seen
there's
those.
people that maybe it was something else, but that you actually volunteered to go live there. I mean, it was a one-way trip, and there's people that actually, I think they've already been picked and they're already selected, but it's like 10 years from now. So they're developing everything, and they're, I mean, they can get called to go live in Mars.
I don't know if I would ever volunteer for that. I feel like, at least for me, I was made to live on Earth.
I mean, I would like a two-way trip.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess to summarize our discussion in the case, basically there was a lack of care, there was a lack of organization and management, a lack of leadership, a lot of bureaucracy, and a lot of attitude that just conveyed that they didn't really take in the full gravity of the situation there, where people's lives were at stake, their reputation was at stake, the equipment and spaceship was at stake, and nobody was really willing to step up and take action, nor was anybody willing to step up and take responsibility and accountability for what happened. So I don't know, does anybody have anything to add to that little synopsis of our discussion?
Nope.
I think you pretty
I
much
think that pretty much sums it up.
summarized
I
it.
think that's pretty good, yeah.
Cool. Well, I'll go ahead and stop broadcasting then.
All right.